Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today I have a favorites list of things that I really enjoyed wearing during the last 6 months, which for me were autumn and winter because I live in the southern hemisphere, and I know a lot of my viewers actually live in the northern hemisphere, most of them in fact, and you'd be interested in watching lists on winter and autumn perfumes. So I've got a little thing like that here. I'm just going to go through stuff that I really enjoyed wearing in the colder months here in Australia, and particularly in Melbourne. We don't get really cold winters like some places do, but definitely cold enough to enjoy very specific scents. So I'm going to start off by talking about a couple of perfumes which feature the note of sandalwood first. All right, so two favorites that I wore during the colder months were Chanel's Egoist and Trumpa's Sandalwood Cologne. Now, if you do a bit of reading about these perfumes, these actually get compared sometimes, although I think apart from the sandalwood note, I find them quite different. And I'm just going to spray a bit on just to give you that comparison. For starters, I think there's definitely a lot more going on in the Chanel Egoist. And the Trumpa Sandalwood Cologne is definitely a little bit more basic, although it is a really good sandalwood note. I have to separate them now. So the Chanel is very rich sandalwood. There's definitely lots of spice. It's more floral than the other one. Rose, carnation, warm spices, and the sandalwood is very thick and buttery. Whereas the Trumpa Sandalwood Cologne is definitely lighter, and it has this really lovely. I never thought that a citrus would work really well with a predominantly sandalwood cologne, but here it really works well, and it makes sense that it is a cologne style perfume because it's got this really nice light lemon opening, and then goes into probably what I would describe as a drier sandalwood to the Chanel Egoist. So when I smell them side by side, and I have not done a proper review of the Trumpa yet, and I will, but definitely I think when you smell these two side by side, there's no comparison. They serve their own purpose. So I would say for really colder months, the Chanel, and maybe those in-between seasons where you can still get a little bit milder weather, the Trumpa would work really well, particularly when the sun's out. But yeah, they're very different. So I'm not sure why they get compared, other than people hoping that this is basically a cheaper alternative to the Chanel. I've got both of them. They're not making either one redundant, and they serve their purpose. Okay, so one of my favorite notes, and particularly one of my favorite notes to wear in colder seasons, is Immortelle, and I have a couple here that feature it but couldn't be more different. So the first one you've seen on the channel before, this is Annick Goutal Sable, and the other one is Christian Dior's Au Noir. I'll talk about Sable briefly. This is essentially my reference when it comes to the note of Immortelle. So, if anyone asks me or wants to know what Immortelle smells like, if they can't find it in isolation, to me this would be the thing that I would recommend to smell. Just so you would immediately recognize this note in other perfumes. It's obviously blended with other things here, but I have that reaction on my face every time I smell it. And it is so, it's this kind of almost burnt caramel on hot skin kind of accord that I get from Sub. It's so unique to anything else that I've ever smelled. And I can understand why it might be a little bit divisive, where some people will either love it or not, well, or really dislike it. There's kind of no in between, I think, with this perfume, and you really have to like the note of Immortelle to get along with this perfume. But to me, it's an Immortelle reference, and dare I say it, a masterpiece from Annick Goutal. Noir is probably was my number one perfume over the winter here, and here you definitely recognize the Immortelle that's in something like Sub, but here it's kind of counterbalanced by this rich aromatic syrupy lavender note, and that's not all. As it develops and the lavender fades away with Au Noir, you start to get what I definitely pick up, a distinct coffee note, and as well as a licorice type of note deep in the dry down, and it gets woodsy and gets it's almost like you spray it on your skin and you get that beautiful initial lavender and Immortelle impression, and then it slowly starts to develop on you like a pre-digital photography, when you used to have to develop prints in a darkroom. You know, suddenly things start to appear on your skin or underneath your nose, and it gets warmer and darker and thick and really comforting. It's such again a unique. I think this is one of Francis Kurkdjian's best achievements in perfumery, better than anything he's done with his own brand. And honestly, I can't think of anything I prefer that he's done better than Au Noir. I do have one of his other perfumes in this list, which I'll be talking about very shortly. Okay, so I can't do a list of favorite cold weather perfumes without including something, and probably one of the few perfumes that I own that is vanilla centric, I guess, and it's still vanilla with a twist. I've spoken about this so much over my time on this channel. This is Eau de Beau from L'Occitane, and this is still available. It's been relabeled. The label design's changed to this. I do not know what the current formulation smells like in comparison to this, but if you ever get a chance to pick one up that looks like this one and you love vanilla, it's a combination of vanilla and incense, and the incense and cypress notes really lighten this up, and like a little bit like the Au Noir, it starts off as a kind of brighter vanilla, and then as it develops on your skin, it really sort of digs deep into the warmer, cozier notes. I find this to be a drier vanilla, as opposed to like a more syrupy, boozy kind of vanilla, and it just really works really well. It performs really good on my skin, at least, especially this version during the cold months, and it's just like never lets me down when I spray this on during the colder months. Autumn, winter, for me, always calls for a staple patchouli fragrance, and that to me is always going to be Patchouli Noble by Nobile 1942. It is my favorite patchouli fragrance, patchouli dominant fragrance anyway. I think it's the combination of really gorgeous, thick, earthy patchouli combined with warmer, resinous materials like labdanum. I think there's a bit of incense in here as well, but the patchouli and labdanum are the stars of the show with this fragrance. So they really balance each other out really perfectly. You get that earthy, slightly green, rough texture of the patchouli, and then the labdanum adds the warmth. It adds the smoother texture to the more brazen patchouli. And I love this when it gets cold. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a couple more perfumes. These are the last two on this list. These are not bottles that I own. One's a travel spray and one's actually just a sample, but I've worn them a lot this winter and I've really, really enjoyed them. Although I am undecided whether I want to try and get full bottles when they're done. Let's see if I miss them once I've emptied these. The first one is, I couldn't do a list like this without mentioning one of my favorite rose perfumes. This is, I won't bother trying to show you on the lens. This is a travel spray of Lumière Noire by Maison Francis Kurkdjian. It's one of my favorite rose patchouli fragrances. It also has really nice, the patchouli is actually not front and center here. Definitely the rose is, and the rose is kind of like this, to me, it's a very stripped back woody rose. It's like, if I'm visualizing this rose, it has a minimal amount of petals on the bud. It has a very stripped back kind of stem, not a lot of leaf. It's really quite woody and delicate. And there is also some green accords that go along with it, but it's not like you're smelling the green of the stem. It's almost like this is like a bouquet of these type of roses tossed in a woody forest, and that's the kind of vibe that I get from Lumière Noire Pour Homme. And clearly this was marketed to men, perhaps men who were a bit sort of frightened to wear a big rose, and that's what I would describe it as, is a kind of almost a minimalist rose, but no doubt that it is a rose perfume marketed to men. So I really enjoy that in the colder months. And the final one that I'll talk about here is a sample. Now, when I started testing this one, it's from the house of Histoire de Parfum. This one is called Prolix, and it's part of one of their sort of separate lines. I think it's called En Part. I think that's correct. And there's a couple of other perfumes, but Prolix is the one I've been testing during the colder months. And initially, when I started wearing this, I wasn't paying too much attention to what I was smelling or what was happening to my skin, other than I could recognize it was a very nice cardamom-based perfume. And once you've smelled several cardamom-dominant perfumes, it's for me, it's a very easy note, spice to kind of get bored of, and it has to be kind of a pretty exceptional perfume to get my attention. But each time I've worn this, and I've probably got about 5 or 6 wears out of this little sample so far, it's really started to grow on me. And today when I sprayed this on, yes, the cardamom's there, and it's a really lovely cardamom note, by the way. I suddenly also picked up this, what to me reminded me of a boozy note. It wasn't anything specific. It wasn't like, you know, specifically rum or whiskey or anything else. It just felt boozy. And now I decided to have a look at the notes list, and I couldn't see anything that listed as a, you know, booze note. I did notice that there was chamomile in here, which could be, you know, in combination with some of the other notes. There's a lovely tobacco note in the base, and again patchouli. I'm just going to spray this on some dry skin, just to kind of remind myself. Yeah. I think it's the chamomile now that I smell it. So this is a really, really interesting perfume, I find. Although this line I think is more expensive than the rest of the Histoire de Parfum line. I could be mistaken. I'll put the price up on the screen. But it is really nice. If you like the note of cardamom, if you're looking to try something different or explore that note, I highly recommend Prolix by Histoire de Parfum. That is my list of favorite cold weather scents for 2022. And I hope everyone watching, or most of you watching, have a lovely autumn, fall and winter in the next 6 months. Enjoy your perfumes, and I'll be looking forward to spring and summer for the next 6 months. So thank you for watching as always, and I'll see you for another video. Bye.